So I'm Jamie Byrne, Director of Content Strategy at YouTube, and yeah, we're going to spend the next 40 minutes, hopefully kind of getting our hands dirty a little bit, getting in the trenches, and talking about what's really happening in online video. We want to talk about what's happening with programming. How is programming changing in video? How is it different than television? How do we build audiences? And also how advertisers can best play in this new landscape or ecosystem. And so joining me this afternoon on the panel is Zay Frank, internet legend. He joined BuzzFeed, is that fair to say? I can say it. I'm going to say it. He's an internet legend. He joined BuzzFeed in September 2012 as the Executive Vice President of Video, where he's focused on finding new formats in social video. Zay is a web pioneer. He was known for some of his early projects like Earth Sandwich, Young Me, Now Me, and The Chill Out Show. And in 2006, he created The Show with Zay Frank, which was an early template for the modern video blog. So please join me in welcoming Zay. We have Jason Kirk, Head of Business Development and Software Sales at Zephyr, a social marketing solution for video that empowers brands and content owners to manage their official and fan presence on YouTube. So, woo. And Oren Katzeff is Head of Programming at Tastemade, the first global food network. At Tastemade, he oversees editorial strategy and works with Tastemade's brand partners to align them with premium, custom content solutions.
Does it say I'm an internet legend there? Or
it does not. It does. But it does say,
that's fair.
Oren had a baby
accurate.
like 3 days ago, so he may fall asleep during this.
Luckily, it's my wife who had the baby and not me, or I would be asleep right now.
Cool. So just to start, set the stage. We're going to anchor our conversation mostly in YouTube, but feel free to to talk about television, any other platform. A couple of quick stats. YouTube has about 1 billion monthly unique users. There are millions of channels on YouTube. 80% of the viewership comes from outside the US, and 40% of the viewership is coming from the world's mobile devices. So supporting a lot of the data points that we've heard over the last half an hour or so. So video is not the same closed ecosystem with a limited number of channels, 500 to 1,000 channels. It's not geographically restricted, and it's not tethered to the living room like television has been, or the environment that we've grown up in. We have the ability as content creators to program directly to consumers. There's no intermediaries, and consumers are watching what they want, when they want. So in that context, I want to talk about how video is really different from TV and what you guys are seeing. So Oren, Tastemade is a global food network on YouTube. And I'd argue that it's actually the heir apparent to the Food Network. Why did Tastemade start on YouTube? Why didn't you start the company focused on television?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to what you say there. When we looked at the landscape, you've got the Food Network, which is primarily TV and primarily US, and there was a huge gap there. There was a digital and global gap that we sought to fill, and I think we've done a great job of that so far. But with respect to YouTube specifically, when you look at the makeup of the company, the three co-founders, Larry, Joe, and Steven, and a lot of the team have deep media experience and have worked with YouTube in the past. So we've really seen YouTube evolve from day one all the way to where we are today. We're familiar with the channels, we're familiar with content. We dig very deep in the data to understand what content works and what content doesn't. And so the fact that we didn't start with TV doesn't mean that we don't have our eye on TV, because really every piece of content we create, we view it on a giant plasma TV in our offices. It's geared for mobile, it's geared for desktop, it's geared for TV. But we started on the platform that we were very familiar with and that we thought we could really excel at. And so that's why we went the YouTube route to start.
Okay, great. So I think we have a clip to show. Do you want to set it up?
We do, yeah. I'll set it up. You'll see in this clip, this sort of breaks down the studio that we created in-house, which is where we create a lot of our content. And then at its core, the hope with this sizzle reel is you'll see a lot of the tenets of Tastemade, a lot of things that are important to us. At its core, we are storytellers. And when it comes to either creating content or working with brands to align them with Tastemade content, the main goal is to align them with really compelling, artsy, good-looking video. And that's what the sizzle reel is all about. Yeah, so you get the idea. It's you know, there's a certain voice and style that we go after, and you can see in the different variations of video we showed, that's the kind of constant theme we try to keep across all our programming.
Great. All right, so Zay, BuzzFeed has talked about how the company is building the TV studio of the future, but that
Not TV studio, just studio.
okay, the studio of the future, but it doesn't mean that the company will create TV shows or movies that might normally think a studio would. Can you talk about that and how BuzzFeed thinks of social and mobile video?
So it's kind of two questions. So specifically, Jonah released a memo that's public earlier this year that said that we're actually not going to go into television and film. And part of the reason is that, I actually do think that video and television are different. I think that television to me represents a business model, and I would say it's a wholesale model. I love television, by the way. It's just not our business. It's a wholesale model, so you produce content and then you distribute it to as many channels as possible. You sell to the highest bidder, and, et cetera, et cetera. And we consider ourselves as a retail model that's focused on something very particular, which is social. And for us, the way that we look at it is that there's what sharing represents is actually a different usage of content. It's not just sharing the best consumable content. I think it is actually a different usage altogether. And we look at it a little differently than the last presentation, although I think that there were some great points in that. We think of it as a very nascent business. We don't know that much about it. We're trying to learn about content as social and what makes it. The three key areas that I'm really interested in, and the way that I got into this was by anecdotally looking at share statements. So the statement that goes along with the piece of content when you share it. And the three categories that I was really interested in was, the first was identity. So when a piece of content expresses a part of my identity better than I can, or it allows me to show affinity to a part of your identity that I don't really know much about. The second would be emotional gift. So I feel X, I want you to feel X, or you feel Y, I want you to feel X. And then the third category is social information, so the social role of information. And the two examples in that space would be, the first would be the humble brag, for example. So the share statements are kind of like, I knew 10 out of the 12 things that were said here, but 2 were new to me, right? Which is actually a way of communicating that you already knew something. And then the other is when a piece of content supports something you've been saying all along. So in that, what we consider this idea of this model of content as the starting point for the development of new formats. And that's really the business that we're in, and it has suggested a completely different production strategy, which we might talk about.
Yeah, we sure will.
And I'll set up this little piece,
Great.
which is, so now there's about 28 or 29 formats out of those 3 underneath, and this one is on the subset of geographic identity.
Great.
Got a moment of your time, excuse me?
I gotta go.
First of all, it smells terrible. Everyone's mean. The culture peaked in the 80s. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if I could just have one moment of your time.
So with a video like that, you see a lot of sharing.
Yeah, so it's kind of an inversion, right? I mean, if you have a set audience, right, what you're going to do is you're going to divide that audience up based on the amount of hours of programming that you have available to you, and then you're going to try to get big, large chunks of that into sort of demographic buckets and program around them, which kind of like, in a lot of cases is going to lead to a regression to the mean. It's going to lead to these wide-arching, or large capture formats. And what we do is we invert that, right? What we do is we look at these very, kind of more niche things. This is actually pretty broad. This is everybody who lives in New York and everybody who has ever lived in New York and people who have opinions about New York, right? That's pretty much, this is a pretty wide net. But one of the more popular things, on BuzzFeed.com and what we've done on the video side as well is things like what it's like to be raised by Asian American immigrant parents, right? That's a tiny, tiny subset. But it inverts the funnel because the emotional sort of resonance of seeing your identity being reflected, so a piece of content for you, has this amazing potential to spread. So those are very, very large trafficked examples there. And it leads to a very kind of different way of thinking strategically about the kind of content opportunities that are available. For example, a huge hit for us was Why the World Sucks for Lefties. And it does, right?
Yeah, right there.
So like, the coffee cups are always turned the wrong way.
The ink on your hand.
Exactly. So it's 10% of the country is left-handed, right? It's actually it's niche enough that there probably isn't very much left-handed content available for you.
Help me.
That's right. Well, I can give you a video, and hopefully you'll pass it along. But yeah, it's been super interesting. Yeah.
All right, great. So Jason, the core of Zephyr's business is created around helping rights holders and brands harness the power of fan-uploaded content. Can you talk a little about the opportunity that exists for right holders and brands on platforms like YouTube and how that's different from what they might see on television?
Yeah, as Jamie said, we're not content creators. We think of ourselves as a technology solution for content creators, particularly major media companies and major advertisers. And it kind of is rooted in this idea of the power of the fan. Our company actually was built by movie fans, and we went to the studios and took all their great moments from their current and library titles, brought them onto YouTube under the Movie Clips banner, and it's still one of the most popular channels in the world on YouTube with 200 million views a month and 6 million subscribers. But along the way we realized, and this is one of the big ways that we think online and video is different from television, is the power of the fan. When we typed in Dark Knight on YouTube, the official content was on page 3, but all these fans had uploaded their moments and had organically and authentically spread and evangelized those videos. And we thought to ourselves, this is really where the power is. This is something that platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter allow us as fans to really engage. And we began to build technology to harness all those videos and build this premium, fan-endorsed, studio-approved, scalable, and targeted network that we continue to successfully sell into and build around. We also started to help brands and major rights holders manage their channels on YouTube because while the fans are the flame, the match is the brand itself. And it's really important that whether you're a studio or a consumer electronics brand, that you think of yourself as a creator and use platforms like YouTube to reach out to your audience and build a voice and set a tone. And because we'd had so much success with all of our Movie Clips channel, we started helping clients such as SNL and Bravo and Real Madrid manage their official presence. And along the way, we came to realize that people on YouTube aren't just fans of Dark Knight or football, they're fans of brands. They re-upload commercials, they do how-tos, and this generation that dominates YouTube is expected to have more of a collaboration, more of a sense of community with the brands, and we thought, what if we could bring that together and share those insights around the power of the fan with advertisers, because our company is rooted completely in video, and what that means to us right now is YouTube, and we think it's the most important social platform, and many people still don't even think it's social, but when you think about the creation aspect, the sharing, the commenting, and the fact that unlike most of the other social platforms, YouTube doesn't just live on YouTube, and as Jamie said, is 1 billion users and 40% mobile and all over the globe, but YouTube is on Facebook, YouTube is on Twitter, YouTube is on Tumblr, and understanding YouTube and video on YouTube allows you to really understand video across social media. So the video that we have is a promo for our new product called Brand ID, which is basically an analytics that leads to action software tool to allow brands, whether you're a soda or you're a feature film, to tap into the power of YouTube from both an official and fan presence.
Hi, I'm Zach.
And I'm Rich. We want to talk to you about Zephyr's brand ID.
When fans of your brand are on other sites and they like your content, they hit a like button. But on YouTube, it's so much more. They upload videos about your brand. And they make amazing content.
And it's happening in a massive way. Every 60 seconds, 72 hours of video is being uploaded to YouTube.
1 billion monthly users.
And what's interesting is a lot of that content surrounds your brand. They are discussing your brand, they are sharing things about your brand, and up until Brand ID, there was no way for brands to know what that conversation was, and no way to know who these people were. When we meet with a brand and we ask them what their engagement is around YouTube, they usually quote us the official statistics from their official channel.
I think I ate the bones. I ate the bones!
Oh, we have 30 million views in total, and then we turn around and say, actually, you don't have 30 million views on your brand. You have 600 million views on your brand. And this is where it's happening.
I ate the bones! KFC decided to take it to the next level with their chicken.
Between that and Oren, I mean, is anyone else hungry with all this video about food?
Okay, so I want to start off continue by talking about programming and specifically about formats. So I think sometimes we seem to expect or see formats in video that look like facsimiles of television. Is that the way that video is going to evolve? Should we expect to see similar structures, or is there an opportunity to do something new? And what do we see that's working?
I'll jump in. I think what's great about programming online is that you can have the data help tell you some of the story. You can experiment, first of all. So when you look at Tastemade programming, we have a variety of different shows. We have stuff that's on location. We have a series called Coastal, which we teamed up with Anheuser-Busch on, and part of it's filmed on the West Coast and part on the East Coast. And then Byron, a chef, goes and meets locals and then actually cooks a recipe right there. And that's about a 7-minute long episode. But we have 2-minute long episodes as well that's just a recipe and a how-to, and that the Slacker shake that you saw earlier was actually an example of a way to create this milkshake. But part of what I mean with data is that you can not only see what size of video works, what length works, where people drop off. We've had an interesting conversation in the past where there was an executive at a food company who thought that the money shot in food videos was always when the person eats
The
it.
eating
Right,
shot,
it's the eating,
right.
right? That's what they thought. Is that's it. You got to have it's the money shot in food.
Stop saying money shot.
It is. It's a whole different language in food. But we had data that suggested otherwise. We actually had data that showed that if we put that shot somewhere else, that the audience responded differently. And so my point is just that you can go in and you can have all the ideas you want about what works, and if it works, great, go with it. But the other added element you have is you really can see data on how long people are hanging around, when are they dropping off, what kind of content do they like, what are they sharing, what are they commenting on, and that can help influence to a degree what kind of content you
Well, you
create.
saw people when somebody actually took a bite, they actually turned off the video, right?
It's gross.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
gross
well,
watching other people eat.
But that's
Depending on the video,
But that's
absolutely.
data you maybe don't have in the television ecosystem that you have access to.
That's right.
I think, first of all, I don't think that it's an either or, right? I mean, it's not about formats replacing other formats necessarily. I think the formats that we enjoy on television and film and things like that are there because they've evolved through a certain space of time, and they're pretty effective from a lot of different perspectives. But from our perspective, when we started this particular studio, we said, if this rise of mobile and rise of social, this is how video is getting consumed. I mean, the acceleration there is incredible. And if we take this philosophy of a different usage, a different role that this media has, and by the way, when I say like a different usage, one of the ways to think about it is that a lot of videos get shared without the full video being consumed, right? I mean, it's pointing to a different way of thinking about it. Another way of thinking about media as a proxy for conversation, which is the underpinning, is the Captain Picard facepalm. You guys know this? I can't see you, so make noise. Do you know this? No? Okay, forget it. No, I'm done. I'm not talking to you guys. I'm gonna cut that entire bit out. But so for us, the big question was, these formats are certainly not optimized for that space. So we pulled all the way back and just cast aside all this notion of traditional format, including storytelling. Like just even this idea of the open and the narrative arc, and started things that were just images and music, images, voiceover, and music, simple sequences of moments. Simple sequences of moments with some sort of a narrative. Like we're trying all these different things, but there is one kind of vexing attitude, I think, even in the digital space, which is that the natural progression of this stuff is as more money comes into the ecosystem, that it all tends towards television quality, right? I mean, like once the money starts rolling in, we'll start really doing the long form series and stuff. But that's sort of like saying that, hip-hop dance will evolve into ballet eventually, and it just won't. It's a totally different thing, and it has its own values, and it, yeah.
Is that because the audiences are expecting something different, or is that the 13 to 24-year-old viewer has a different understanding of what quality is from those of us who've been in the industry for 20, 30 years? Or
Well, I don't think that it's about, this notion of quality has to be broken apart, because and I see this in hiring quite a bit, is that the first thing, because what we're really optimizing for is sharing, is whether a piece of content shares, and we have great data on that, we can easily see, is the ratio of seeded traffic to overall traffic, small, right? I mean, we want giant influx of new viewers on each clip. So this idea of aesthetic, when I hire people, a lot of them are talking about color grading and just maintaining costume over time and all these different aspects. But I think that in our space, it's network aesthetics. It's what value does the content have in this ecosystem, and it's not just the ecosystem, it's what does it have specifically on Facebook or in YouTube or on Twitter. They're different environments, and this is sort of part of the reason that I think we're not in the wholesale business, is we take all those different platforms fairly seriously. There's different usages of content on tablets than there is on mobile. We see it. We see it DIY and how-to stuff performs completely differently on tablets. It's part of the work set.
Yeah, and the thing that I would just add to that, I mean, with Tastemade, it is part of our voice for content to be high quality. But I think when you take a step back, what does that really mean? What does quality mean? I think at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to create content that somehow inspires or creates a call to action. And with BuzzFeed, part of that call to action is hitting that share button, right? And that's part of it for us. The other part is, did we get someone to actually, if it's a how-to recipe, did they do it? Did they share it with someone? Did it somehow inspire them to want to either create it or take action or do something? And I think that's an important element to any piece of content you create.
We see it as authenticity. There are many fans out there that are uploading the multi-million-dollar moment from their favorite movie or TV show or even last night's game. But when you have an influencer that is doing a product review on the iPhone 5 versus the Samsung Galaxy, those people tend to look, not like television, but they come off very authentically because people tend to trust them. You look at them and their channels have more subscribers sometimes than the actual brand that they're talking about. And we see a trend of fans becoming fans of fans themselves. And so brands are more and more looking at those influencers who are not just clicking the like button, as it said in the video, they're actually taking the time to produce, create, upload, edit, and bring these videos onto YouTube and share them. And people are looking at them kind of more authentically, be like, they're not trying to sell me anything, they're just giving me their opinion on which phone they like better.
So in this context, how do you know if something's working? I mean, are we looking at likes? Are we looking at just views? Is it subscribers? What are the kind of the indicators of success that we're looking at across our platform?
I mean, I could say from what we're trying to do, when we go to a brand with brand ID, and we don't just talk about your channel had 5 million views, we found 50 million more views. We're looking at, we created a relevancy score with our algorithm. We're looking at shares, comments, metadata, related videos, how many views on Twitter and Facebook as well as on YouTube, to kind of say most popular to us is not just views, because as I think we all know, it doesn't always mean it's the most popular just because it has the most views. A lot of things get watched for small periods of time, and then they get counted as views. So we're looking at views as one indicator, but we also try and look at the whole ecosystem of engagement, whether it's the sharing, what other videos are being watched before and after, and comments about the video to kind of guide that versus just, most watched.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think the other thing too is you like to look at engagement. Typically if someone comes in and just watches your video and leaves at some point, or doesn't stick around for a little bit more, for a little bit of dessert, it's might not be as great an overall experience as if you somehow led them down this path of programming in your channel. And so on an individual content standpoint, I mean, again, when we look at it, we like to tell a story in everything we do. We want there to be some entertaining, engaging thing that we're telling there, but we also like to see that someone is watching, that they're doing more in our network, that we've activated them to do something beyond just watch 2 minutes of the video.
I mean, for us, it's, I'll just say it again, it's sharing.
Yeah.
And that's our key performance indicator. It's our key knowledge indicator internally. All of this stuff obviously exists in a larger context. So, this notion of earn and how well something shares is a good indication of whether we're doing our content job well. Like really exploring these formats, making some headway. In terms of operationalizing the business, and the broader context, it's going to be watch time. Whether we're driving efficiently across different pieces of video and things like that. And then there are these kinds of intangibles which I think are also part of the equation. Press, and this is where other forms of engagement can kind of come in, these sort of more halo pieces. I mean, it's a very complicated, rich world, and breaking it down into just one or two things probably won't capture the whole of the story.
Yeah, and at YouTube, and it's we have public-facing view counts that we relied on for the first probably 5 years of the company, but we recently, we don't put it on the site itself, but we're on the mobile platforms, but we actually look at watch time now also to understand how channels are performing relative to one another. We look at engagement metrics. So what is that sharing activity? What is the kind of comment activity? And then we also look at ramp.
Are you answering your own question?
I am.
Is this totally fair?
I've just blown up the whole
Because I'm going to start
format.
asking questions then.
Let's go for it.
We're going to blow this up. I'm going to start walking back and
I'm
forth,
not
see
allowed
if the
to throw-
spotlight
I'm
guy
not-
can
it's
keep
fine.
up. I'm doing the whole thing.
So and then we also look at ramp, like how fast somebody is growing. So do you want to ask one? So I want to talk about kind of the production. Talk about production. You mentioned it in the beginning. Oren, you guys have a studio that you've built in Santa Monica. I know, Zay, you have an interesting philosophy around like how you hire your production people. Like, what is this process? Are we spending the same amounts of money that we do creating pilots, or how is it different, and what's the process?
Well, so from our perspective, it was really about this